Time now for The Exchange. Joining us is Ted Deutch, CEO of the American Jewish Committee, a civil rights group and Jewish advocacy group. He joined AJC after serving more than 12 years as a U.S. House representative from Florida. Ted, I don't even know if I can honestly say it's good to see you again. We just had you on after that horrific shooting in Washington, D.C., where Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky were killed outside of the Jewish Museum in Washington. And here we are again. You know, you think you know how to talk to your children about these things, especially when it comes to your own Jewish children. We've covered anti-Semitism a lot. I have a teenager who is extremely well-read. And, you know, when this happened last time, the first thing I was thinking was, I really hope he's not looking at his phone. I really hope that he's not going to see this headline, because it yet sparks another conversation about why does this constantly happen to Jewish people. How are you talking to communities? What is your message to the American Jewish community today?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. I shouldn't be. It's crazy that you and I are having almost exactly the same conversation that we had barely 10 days ago when Sarah and Yaron were gunned down in Washington by terrorists who effectively took the war in Gaza, took their support for Hamas, turned it into some sort of vile, upside-down social justice movement, and took all those lies and incitement to heart. Globalized the Intifada, the language that's been used to rile people up leads them to violence. That's what happened here. What do I tell people? There's nothing you can tell the community that it doesn't already know. The Jewish people have experienced anti-Semitism for millennia. And right now we're standing with the people in Boulder, the community in Boulder, the broader Jewish community and the broader community, just like everyone around the country should be standing with them. But this isn't just a conversation that you should be having with your Jewish children. This is a conversation that the entire country should be having with all of their kids, with their neighbors, with the people that they work with. We talked about this 10 days ago. What happened? Think about what we've seen on October 7th of 2023. We had the worst attack against Jews since the Holocaust, when these terrorists went into Israel and slaughtered 1,200 people, killing them and burning them alive. Now, that same tactic has been brought to America by the people who've been using the same slogans as these terrorists. It shouldn't be surprising, and we need to make clear that we're just not going to tolerate it anymore, not just the Jewish community, but everyone in America and around the world.
Ted, I was speaking to Oren Segal from the Anti-Defamation League earlier, who was essentially saying that we're in this really dangerous territory when people continue to sort of conflate the policies of Israel with the views of Jewish people around the world. And then they use that, he was saying to me, to justify attacks. How do we get that to stop?
Well, there are a few things that need to happen. First of all, you need to be clear. We need to be clear that this isn't about Israeli policy. This is about an effort to demonize the entire existence of the state of Israel, to seek the destruction of the state of Israel, just like those Hamas terrorists and Hezbollah terrorists and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists and all of the others, the Houthis who have continued to attack Israel throughout the decades. That's what this is ultimately about. And the language that's being used, the language that says what the terrorists are screaming in Gaza, when they talk about Intifada, calls for terrorism, when they talk about Palestine from the river to the sea, where the message is there can no longer be a state of Israel. And when they bring that to the United States and say, as too many in America have now widely adopted, that if you support Israel, then all of the lies about Israel being baby killers, Israel committing genocide, utter, baseless, disgusting lies, those get applied to you as a supporter of Israel, to you as a Jew. And when that happens, this is the result. That's what's happening here. And that's what we all of us, every part of society, everyone needs to speak out. We would never tolerate this, never, ever, ever, about any other group in America. And we cannot tolerate it here. When the goal of of this guy in Boulder and the goal of the person in Washington and probably so many other people marching in the streets calling for intifada is not to change policy in Israel. It's to ultimately destroy Israel and anyone who supports Israel. And that's the overwhelming majority of Jews included and first and foremost.
And so, Ted, we talk about anti-Semitism being around for millennia, and it's a form of cancer that morphs to whatever the headline and news cycle is of the day. Remember in 2018, the Tree of Life shooting, the worst mass shooting of American Jews here in our history, and that related to immigration policies. I grew up, Jews grew up, and our non-Jewish friends just become accustomed to seeing armed police around Jewish places of worship, Jewish education centers. Is there something about the normalization of the need for security exclusively to one particular minority group that also perhaps can be addressed, that this is just not normal? I never went to synagogue without a number of police officers outside, and this was decades ago.
Yes, and it's a fundamentally important question. We talk a lot about how we can't normalize anti-Semitism, we can't normalize Jew hatred, we can't normalize the kind of calls to violence like we've seen that led to what happened in Boulder. But likewise, you're so right, we can't normalize this idea that somehow, well, for the Jewish community, if they gather together to pray, they should have metal detectors and armed guards and people walking around the premises looking for suspicious intruders and checkpoints coming into the parking lot. And for the Jewish community at their community centers, they may be putting on plays or having a film festival, but you know what? When they go to those festivals, you know that they're going to have their cars checked when they go in. That's not normal. And you're right. It's become normalized. Because after this, I've spoken with elected officials who have, the first thing they tell me is that they intend to do everything they can to get more security for the Jewish community. And I'm grateful. But that's the fact that that's the go-to, that somebody went to an event where they were marching to call for the release of hostages held by terrorists for more than 600 days, and they were set on fire. And the first reaction is, wow, that's really terrible. We're going to get you some more armed guards out in front of your institutions. That can't be normal anymore. If there's one thing that's going to come from what's happened over the past 2 weeks, it's this conversation and making sure that everyone in power, everyone with a position to influence others, stands up and say, you know what, I'm not going to just accept the fact that my Jewish friends and neighbors should have to have armed guards everywhere they go. I don't. And they'll say, and they shouldn't have to either. That's what we need them to say. And then it's only natural for them to go on and take the next step of saying, these calls to violence, they aren't social justice, they're incitement. And we're not going to tolerate that either.
Ted Deutch, thank you once again for everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Ted.